The rugged terrain of Afghanistan stretched out like an endless maze of jagged peaks and deep valleys, a formidable stage for a conflict that seemed as eternal as the mountains themselves. For Sergeant Cole Matthews, it was his third deployment, and the weight of the mission felt heavier than ever. The year was 2009, and the war had reached a boiling point. Villages became battlegrounds, and every shadow held the potential for danger. Cole's unit, a tight-knit group of 12 soldiers, was tasked with a high-risk operation, to secure a strategic valley that had become a vital supply route for insurgent forces. The Taliban had been using the valley to transport weapons, and intelligence suggested that a key leader was hiding in a remote village nestled deep within the mountains. The mission began under the cover of darkness. The unit moved silently through the rocky terrain, their boots crunching softly against the gravel. Cole took point, his eyes scanning every ridge and crevice for signs of movement. He'd learned to trust his instincts. Survival often depended on noticing what others missed: a misplaced rock, a glint of metal, the faintest sound of shifting sand. As dawn broke, the village came into view, a cluster of mud brick homes surrounded by terraced fields. It seemed peaceful, almost idyllic, but Cole knew better. The serene facade could hide deadly intentions. The unit took up positions on the outskirts, observing the village through scopes and binoculars. "See anything, Sarge?" asked Private Ramirez, his voice barely above a whisper. "Not yet," Cole replied. "But stay sharp, this place is too quiet." The silence was broken by the distant sound of a child's laughter. Cole's heart tightened. He'd seen too many times how war turned innocent lives into collateral damage. But he couldn't afford to let his guard down. The stakes were too high. The unit moved into the village cautiously, splitting into pairs to search the buildings. Inside, they found signs of recent activity: cooking fires still warm, half-eaten meals, and hastily abandoned belongings. The villagers had fled, but why? Had they been warned, or were they hiding nearby? Suddenly, a sharp crack echoed through the air, a single gunshot, followed by a burst of automatic fire. The ambush had begun. "Contact, North Ridge," shouted Corporal Evans, diving for cover behind a low wall. Cole's training kicked in. He barked orders, directing his team to defensive positions. The enemy's gunfire rained down from the high ground, forcing the soldiers to hunker down and return fire in controlled bursts. Dust and debris filled the air as bullets struck the walls and ground around them. Through the chaos, Cole spotted movement on the ridge. A group of insurgents, armed with AK-47s and RPGs, was trying to flank their position. He grabbed his radio. "Bravo team, shift left and cut off their advance. Ramirez, on me, we're taking the high ground." With adrenaline coursing through his veins, Cole led Ramirez up a narrow path that snaked toward the ridge. The climb was grueling, the weight of their gear making every step a struggle. Gunfire and explosions echoed around them, a cacophony of violence that seemed to drown out everything else. As they reached the crest, Cole and Ramirez came face to face with two insurgents. The exchange was brief and brutal. Cole's training took over, his movements swift and precise. Within seconds, the threat was neutralized, and the ridge was secured. From their vantage point, Cole could see the entire battlefield. His unit was holding their ground, but the insurgents were relentless. Then he noticed something alarming: a truck loaded with explosives speeding toward the village. "IED truck, south approach," Cole yelled into his radio. "Take it out now." Specialist Carter, the unit's marksman, responded immediately. From his position on a rooftop, he took aim and fired. The truck exploded in a fiery blast, the shockwave shaking the ground and sending a plume of black smoke into the sky. The tide began to turn. The remaining insurgents, realizing their plan had failed, started to retreat. Cole ordered his unit to hold their fire, letting the enemy flee. Pursuit wasn't worth the risk. Their mission was to secure the valley, not chase shadows. As the dust settled, the unit regrouped in the village square. The adrenaline that had kept them alive began to wear off, replaced by exhaustion and the weight of what they'd just endured. Cole did a head count. Everyone was accounted for, though a few bore minor injuries. "Good work, everyone," Cole said, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside him. We held the line and stopped their advance. This valley's ours. The soldiers nodded, their faces grim but resolute. They knew the victory was temporary. The insurgents would regroup, and the fight would continue. But for now, they had accomplished their mission. As night fell, Cole sat alone on the ridge, staring out at the darkened valley. The stars above seemed impossibly bright, a stark contrast to the darkness of the conflict below. He thought about the villagers who'd fled, the children whose laughter had echoed through the streets that morning. He wondered if they would ever return, if they would ever know peace. War had a way of stealing everything: lives, innocence, even hope. But as Cole sat there, he made a silent promise to himself and to those he fought to protect. He would endure. He would fight. And one day, maybe, there would be an end to the violence. Until then, he would carry on, a soldier in a war that seemed as endless as the mountains themselves.